Well, first things first, Lynn, I'm so excited to have you here. It's such an honor. I really could see your work in this movie. It was amazing and wonderful, and I loved it from my side. So it's really such a pleasure to have you on with us today, man.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Good to be here.
Oh man. Okay, so right off the bat, I just want to ask you, what was some of sort of the challenges to bring forth the essence and tone of these amazing video games into like a film format?
Yeah, I think that was like the biggest I think well, very first thing, Emma gave me the script and uh I was unaware of Five Nights
Mhm.
because I'm not a gamer, a movie maker. I hadn't played games since the 80s. And so she really just like fully educated me. She's like, come over, play this game with me. And then from there, I just became all about research. And so it was so important for Emma to hit that tone of the video game, which is just that kind of that suspense and really kind of capture the ethos of that gameplay. And then obviously you got to make it into a narrative, which is a totally different vehicle to try to do, and such a rich canon of Freddy's. um so much of that tone, which I work a lot in horror film, and that's the thing I love about horror film is the aesthetics and tone and building suspense and having those scares. So
Mm.
it was really just kind of outlining, what is the visual world of Freddy's, what's the visual world outside Freddy's. You have this ticking clock of there's a night, there's 5 nights, there's gonna like be something that builds, right? And so Emma and I just really discussed like how do you build that suspense in a horror film in the genre and capture kind of the one essence that's magical about Freddy's, but at the same time that's magical, I think, as a kid is like so frightening as an adult. And it's like that was like our big like how do you do that? And so it's just kind of like chipping away of just those visual ideas as we went through it. And what's so cool is just that it obviously you have the animatronics that it's own element, but the pizzeria itself had to also have this real tone. And for me, I was looking for my own kind of visual sense of like a movie like The Shining, where you have like the Overlook Hotel, you've got like Danny that has to go through all these various hallways. There's this kind of overall sense of dread in this one place. So for me, I was like, oh, I want this to be like the Overlook Hotel of pizzerias. It's like you wanted to just, in addition to the animatronics, but just there's this other supernaturalness to the environment when you enter Freddy's, and that had to be very important. Obviously, from the gameplay, the original gameplay, we know about the security monitors, and that's very important. But we had to like expand beyond that. Once you get out of that office, what is that world going to be? It's got to feel that same kind of what's lurking around the corner feeling. So those are just some of the things that we had to kind of sift through, and it was cool.
Wow, well, that was amazing. That answers my other three questions as well. So wonderful. Even better. And thank you for sharing that experience, with getting involved with the games and also like finding it, almost like finding out about them from scratch, and developing the world
Yeah.
from there. That was so cool. And definitely I noticed the perspective between the children and the adults that was like so important. The distinction, I don't think that's been delved so much into. So that was like a big theme in the movie that I enjoyed. I am so sorry about that.
Yeah,
Maybe that
all good.
maybe that was one of the Freddies in the background taking
Hey,
over.
that exactly. It's
I mean,
like
you're talking
you
about my
don't know the
background, but
noise.
like, yeah, I went and got the costume from my local costume shop, Cinderella Hires, and I had to show off this whole vibe
Oh,
from
that's
Five
awesome.
Nights. And I think it's gonna take over now
I
with
love it.
Halloween. You guys are releasing just in time all the kids'
I hope so.
costumes
I hope so.
with Five Nights at Freddy's. I think that's gonna be amazing. So I actually want to talk
Yeah.
about actually your previous work in like films like A House in the Bayou, They Them, which I loved. What makes Five Nights at Freddy's stand out for you from those projects?
Oh wow. Well, I mean, I've never had well, first of all, I've never been involved with a project that had like a fan base built in, a canon, um, and I mean, like 10-year plus worth of material. So that was, sorry, I apologize. That was like a built-in kind of research entity of just so many layers and potential Easter eggs and uh such a lore that's already built in. So that right off the bat was like a completely different experience for me. Because you're building upon something, but you're taking responsibility for something that's very cherished and loved by so many people, and you have to kind of like you want to do something fresh with the material, but also maintain the credibility of what's kind of established, right? So you're kind of you're you're trying to navigate through those elements. So that right off the bat was like a big thing for me. I think also for me, some of the scale was a bit bigger than I had worked with, which was very exciting. The Mark, our production designer, built the entirety of Freddy's.
No,
Can you hear me?
I think we got you back. Yeah. Hello.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry. I was saying that
Yeah, you were saying
Freddy's
he
was just
built
from
the. Yeah, he built the
he built
entirety.
the whole Freddy's as one
Wow.
big entirety, which was incredible. Like just as I think from actors' perspective, from a filmmaker's perspective.
I mean, that
Now there
should
were
be a
certain things you could
museum now. That should be a
no
museum
it
going forward.
it was absolutely epic, for us, and just to have that visual control, but also just be like, here's this place, like we could go from one end to the next, and if you never left the stage, you thought you were in this location. The ceilings, everything
Mm.
was all built. So from just a scale point, it was very interesting. I did a little bit of work on Megan, so I had a little bit of experience. I did some additional photography for them, so I had some experience with working with the animatronics, but nothing to a scale like this, where you just had teams of people working on the animatronics and how you manage that on the day. So it was just from my perspective, it was just a different scale for me working on. Now, luckily, I'd done 3 other movies with Emma. So I think for both of us, having worked together, there's a real assuredness and trust, and I think excitement for both of us. So we were both creatively like, let's do something different. Let's kind of go out of our comfort zone in certain elements and try to push ourselves creatively. And that's what Emma and I have always done in every project. And so, yeah, but I just think, I don't know, going in, I had a certain appreciation for the fan base, but then once we completed it and just seeing how excited people were for it, took it to a whole nother level. So I've been very honored to have been a part of it, and hopefully kind of extend the canon with new things that
Yes, I think you definitely did that.
people
Yeah.
will be very excited, about.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've been playing the games for years, so it's so wonderful to hear you talk about that and the care that you took with these characters that have been with us for so long, especially with the kids
Yeah.
growing up with us. And I think one of the elements that I would love to talk to you about is the horror elements of the animatronics, but in the sense of they're there and they're not there, and I felt like you really captured that, especially with like the shadow work or just like movement
Oh
work
yeah.
in terms of where you see them but you don't see them. at the same time, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah.
Well, the
Well, that's
character
so
doesn't
much of
see
the
them.
gameplay is like, oh yeah, from the security footage, the game, the original, it's like you get moments, and I mean that's the great thing about horror. It's like your mind, your imagination fills in the
The
blanks.
blanks,
I mean
yeah.
that's the fantastic elements of that's why I love working in the genre so much. Is like you can really play on that like internal fear I think that we have.
Yes.
You hear a noise like you just heard, you look around, nothing's there, or
What is that?
if
Yeah.
someone appeared behind me, as we're talking, or
Yeah, yeah.
it's
If
just like
Freddy comes alive as an animatronic behind me, I'm gone. I'm gone.
totally. So I just think, I think with the animatronics, just like the gameplay, it's like you want to see enough. You have to strike that balance. I think just with anything, anytime you're working with creatures, any kind of creature horror movie, you can't spill everything at once, and you want to see certain elements at certain times, and not,
Yeah, so
a movie
like
we
in
had
terms
talked
of
about. Yeah,
that, what was sort of the things that you considered when planning those shots, like in terms of how do we get those elements in there?
yeah.
Was it
Well,
with
we
CGI
did
or was it like actual mascots that
everything.
they had?
Everything is in camera. There's certainly like little cleanups here and there, but I would say 95% or whatever, like the majority of everything is in camera, except for
Wow.
little elements in here. It was very important, like the very early discussion from Emma, and I think from all the creatives, was this has to be in camera. And that's why they were able to bring the Jim Henson Company to come in and build these animatronics.
Wow.
Um, and uh, and so early on with Emma and myself and Jim Henson Company, I started doing camera tests with Jim Henson at their creature shop, and we would test all the various elements, how much things can move, what does that movement look like. Too much might feel silly, a little less is just enough the horror. And you're trying to build the vocabulary with the, at least for Emma, the puppeteers, of what's the signature elements, what, because they have, even though it's slight, you've got eye movements and eyebrow movements and sometimes ear movements, and plus the
Yeah, with
various joints, and so it's a little goes a long way, I think we found, and obviously getting them to walk required other kind of puppeteer elements. So a lot of that was just lots of testing. We tested lots and lots in front of camera, and some of it was for me for my lighting and lenses and how did they look good on camera with what lenses, but a lot was also for Emma to discuss with puppeteers and Jim Henson Company in terms of what looks good on camera, what movements look good. So once we did all this test, you start to build like, oh, that was a cool thing. You're kind of discovering you have that without pressure. You're just trying stuff, whether it's good or bad, and then you discover something that you didn't. And some of that too was just shadow play, where I would take a light low and see what the shadows look like on the wall. And Emma and I were like, well, we want to make sure we do some shadow work in this. And I think also just our love of like old horror movies, like the old Universal, like Frankenstein and Dracula's, like those old like 1920, 1930 movies with all those classic, monster. We want to incorporate some of that too. And so it was really just that parsing out process. So when we were prepared enough that when we come on set, we're not trying to discover that, but we already have like a language early on. So we tried to do our due
oh,
diligence to do as much testing as we could, before showing up with 100 people watching us work. You're not wasting anyone's time, because it just, to work with the puppeteers, it takes up time. So with our testing, and also the puppeteers and the stunt people did a lot of work beforehand to try to make sure we worked quickly on set.
wow, that is incredible. I love how much you created ahead of time as well. That is so cool.
Yeah.
And how did you sort of balance, I guess, the cinematic moments with what you may have known as what the fans would love, you know? Like, how did you manage to visually tell that story without like compromising what the fans love?
Well, I never knew, like, I don't know if there was ever, I guess where it comes to, at what point, what are the guardrails, I guess, like
Yeah.
where do you break? But Emma was more in touch, you know, I, I think with her and other discussions she had with Scott, and like she was kind of beholden of knowing where the guardrails were. I often might suggest like, oh, would it be cool to like do this camera movement, or maybe we shoot certain things certain ways? And um, I think she was more inclined to say, I think that would fit within the world. But I think for the most part, I think it was really about the integrity of the characters, um, some of the elements we want to make sure we nodded with the gameplay, obviously with security cameras and certain ways we frame things that we are maintaining that. Um, there's certain elements, again, going back to the tone, they're suspenseful, but also playful in other ways that Emma wanted to kind of strike those elements that were kind of the core, I think, of the game. But in terms of the license to kind of create a visual cinematic movements or this or that, I don't think we were ever held back. It's like, what is going to pull us in emotionally with these characters, or what's going to make the most suspenseful moment, or what's going to make the best jump scare, or what's going to be, you know, um, as to your point earlier when you were talking about like point of view of like a kid versus
The
of
adults,
Abby
yeah.
versus Mike, it's very different. And
Very.
she really wanted there to be moments where Abby, we see this in a very magical light. She sees
Yeah, and
this
I
as
think
the
that was a
possibility.
big, I think it was a big perspective change for me. I think I've only ever seen it as an adult, as the game is like this horrifying thing. I don't think we ever thought about that perspective. So to
Yeah,
showcase that, I was like, it was like a mind blown moment for me. I was like, whoa, I didn't actually realize the animatronics, like what could the other perspective of what the animatronics
yeah,
could be, so that was
no,
really fun.
totally. Yeah, and I have a 9-year-old daughter, and so once I started researching this, and I had all these Freddys around, she was like, "What is this?" She became so engrossed, and I could
Oh
see,
wow,
and then
that's
she
so
wanted to
cool.
watch all the YouTubers, and she wanted to watch everything and be a part of the game, and I could see like that excitement. It is like I think there's a purity of a child's perspective,
Mm.
which is just total. It is like a magicalness, and then there's a moment that it
Yeah,
is
I
gonna
don't think they see what
change.
we see. I don't think they see what we see,
Yeah,
Like we
totally.
see all the mechanics in it, and I think they just see it as this big fluffy thing that's come to life.
Yeah,
You know? So it's really
totally.
fun for
And
them.
Emma really wanted that duality. We had talked also about like the movie like Jurassic Park, because there is that idea where it's like, oh wow, this isn't this great? It's a
Oh, that
wonderful
is such
thing,
a good distinction.
and then
Yes.
all of a sudden it's just
It's
like,
just
no,
mayhem. Yeah.
everything you thought was cool
Is
is
now
trying to
out to
kill
kill
you.
you.
So
Yeah, it's out
yeah,
to kill you.
yeah. So I think that was an early, just kind of was a guiding kind of inspirational thing. Not that we really lifted much from it, but it was really just more of a like a perspective idea. Like, how do you play with that? We thought that movie did it so well. And so she really wanted there to be moments. And it really, we're down with Abby, we're in her perspective. Sometimes you're really looking up from her perspective. You're seeing it from her viewpoint versus Mike. So we tried to make little subtle distinctions, and the
Dude,
type of
yes. What
lenses we
was it
use.
like working with
Yeah.
Mike, with Josh Hutchinson, like and
Oh,
getting the
I mean,
shots working with him?
he's awesome. I mean, he's such a pro, and like it could. I mean, I couldn't say anything. I mean, everybody on this film was like fantastic, and it just like felt like such a family atmosphere. And I
Oh,
think everyone just was like coming from like a true point of love for making this movie. And I think everybody wanted to really cared that this movie get well made, and so yeah, I mean, he's in nearly almost every scene, you know. So it's like it was really just great working with him, and yeah, I just he's I have not I don't know what else to say other than just like he's just like such a professional and just like such a sincere great person and actor to be around, you know. And I think him also having worked as a child actor all the way through, I think
Oh,
just seeing
right.
his
Yes.
experience working with Abby and that rapport on set was really cool to see because he just they got along so well, and I think he understands that process also of being a kid actor. And so just his kind of sensitivity to all that, I just thought just really helped also, you know, Piper's performance as well. And it just was
Yeah,
really great,
definitely.
you
And
know.
I
Yeah,
feel like, you
yeah,
know how you were talking about getting those shots that drew you in emotionally with the character. Those were the shots that really stood out for me in this movie, is that it's not just the horror film. It's like you really feel for this character and you understand his story and why he's the way
yeah.
that he is, you know? So that was just wonderful to see. And
Oh,
yes,
for
and the
sure. I mean, yeah,
animatronics, the way you guys shot the animatronics, it was truly wonderful. Again, for like Foxy, oh my God, so terrifying. Absolutely
yeah.
demented, terrifying. Um,
No, it was a joy to go to set every day. We were filming animatronics. Like you would show up on set and they are life size, real, and when
did you ever have
puppeteers
a
are behind them,
moment
yeah.
where they were over your shoulder and you were like, "Oh no, I forgot they were there." You got freaked out. Was there ever those
Well,
moments?
I think it's I think what's funny is that, you know, the puppeteers, especially when they're doing the animatronic faces and things, is like even in between setups that they're just messing with. You know,
They
at
tried to
some point you
get you.
forget that there's someone controlling this. You know, you start to believe that they are
Right
real, in
there.
fact. And
Yes.
yeah, and I think a few times also would kind of freak the actors out a little bit.
I
You know,
definitely
because
would if
you're
they were stationary, especially not if they're moving, but when they're stationary, it's like you don't know what could happen. You know, they could
yeah,
really come to life or just disappear, like the magic that you put in the movie, just
for
disappear
sure,
and reappear somewhere else with like a flickering
sure,
light
sure.
bulb. Um,
Yeah.
but no, truly, it has been such a pleasure to have you here. It's such an honor. I love your work. I can't wait to see what you get involved with next. What next horror movie you're a part of?
Yes.
Uh,
Hi, I'm Lyn Moncrief, director of photography on Five Nights at Freddy's. Having an awesome conversation on Glitched.
awesome. Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.